so many questions still unanswered about the terror plot and how to protect our homeland, we've invited two congressional leaders on national security to discuss what happens now. Dianne Feinstein is chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Congressman Pete King is head of the House Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, and he joins us from New York. Senator Feinstein, one of the big issues that's come up now, should Tsarnaev be treated as a criminal, questioned under the public safety exception to the Miranda rule, but then read his rights and told his right to remain silent and have a lawyer? Or should he be treated as an enemy combatant with no such protections?
I believe very strongly the former. I think that's the only legal way to proceed. I do not believe under the military commission law that he is eligible for that. It would be unconstitutional to do that. Let me say this, Chris. One of the great things about America is that we come together at times of trial. I very much regret the fact that there are those that want to precipitate a debate over whether he's an enemy combatant or whether he is a terrorist, a murderer, etc. Federal law, we've had 435 terrorist convictions under federal law. We've had 100+ arrests. There have been maybe a half a dozen under the military commission. It is really very clear to me that the course that can be taken, you've got the high-value interrogation group. They're skilled. They know how to do this. The Miranda right can be read at a later time. He has reportedly been shot through the throat. He's intubated. He can't talk now. So there is time to do the investigation, to make a clear assessment, and to move from there. So I really regret all of this discussion, which is creating a conflict that need not be there. The administration is ready for this.
Let me bring in Congressman King. Despite the comments of Senator Feinstein, do you think Tsarnaev should be treated as a criminal or an enemy combatant?
I believe he should be treated as an enemy combatant for the purpose of interrogation. I've put out a statement with Senator McCain, Senator Graham, Senator Ayotte. The reason for it is there are so many questions unanswered. There are so many potential links to terrorism here. Also, the battlefield is now in the United States, so I believe he is an enemy combatant, and he would not be tried before a military commission. Ultimately, he would be tried in a civilian court, and the statements taken from him cannot be used against him in that trial. But right now, he is really one of the only links we have as far as any Chechen involvement in the Al-Qaeda movement, in the overall Islamist movement. And we don't know, are there other conspirators out there? Are there other explosives out there? Where do they get their radicalization? Are there mosques, imams we should be looking at? Who did his brother meet with when he was in Russia and Chechnya? These are only questions that I believe can be obtained through, if he does not get his Miranda rights, because even though right now there's the public safety exception, that's going to expire in about 48 hours. And after that, he can lawyer up and stay quiet. I'm not interested. He's going to be convicted one way or the other in a civilian court. Right now, it's to get intelligence. This is a unique opportunity to go into a treasure trove of intelligence. Only he has it.
Let me ask you, excuse me, Congressman, but I do want to get to the intelligence because I know you both have been briefed by the administration this week. Senator Feinstein, what can you tell us about the plot at this point? Was there any foreign involvement? And especially, what do you know, if anything, about the older brother, Tamerlan's trip to Russia last year?
Well, we do not know specifics. However, we do know that there was very likely a call from Russia before he went back to Dagestan and Chechnya, asking about it. I think just conjecture would lead one to believe that this may have come from his running jihadist sites on his website. Anyway, he went home for 6 months. That's a lapse. We will find out what happened during those 6 months. I think there is likely going to be an assessment that this was somebody who did want to participate in a jihadist event. There is ample evidence, fingerprints, I understand, direct testimony from one of the people that had his legs blown off, that he recognized him. They admitted to the driver of the car that they hijacked, that they were the bombers. So I think there's going to be a great deal of evidence put together to be able to convict him, and it should likely be a death penalty case under federal law. I believe that the federal competence in doing this at this time is extraordinary. I believe that, let me just finish, that the Hague can interrogate him.
This is the high-value interrogation
yes,
group.
with Abdul Muttalib. They've done it with many, many others, and they've gotten convictions out of all of them.
Let me bring in Congressman King.
Yeah,
What do you...
About a conviction. I'm not worried about a conviction. He's going to be convicted. I want the intelligence so he can save American lives, and that can only be done, I believe, effectively if he's treated as enemy combatant and does not have access to a lawyer.
You both have made your point very ably. Let me ask you, if I can, Congressman, what do you make of the fact that because of a Russian request, the FBI interrogated the older brother Tamerlan back in 2011 about his ties to radical Islam? They found he was not a threat. And I guess two questions. First of all, what do you make of that interrogation? And what about the fact that when he returned after 6 months in Russia, he apparently was not on an FBI watch list?
Chris, I have great regard for the FBI and for Director Mueller, but this is the latest in a series of cases like this. Anwar al-Awlaki, Major Hassan, Carlos Bledsoe, Robert Headley, and now this case with the older brother, where the FBI is given information about someone as being potential terrorist. They look at him, and then they don't take action, and they go out and they carry out murders after this. So, again, I'm wondering, again, is there something deficient here? What went wrong? And, again, even if there was nothing they could find in 2011, he goes to Chechnya in 2012. He has statements up on his website. He's talking about radical imams. Why didn't the FBI go back and look at that? Listen, I don't want a Monday morning quarterback. They did a great job in resolving the case, but as far as getting information in advance and not seeming to take the proper action, this is at least the 5th case I'm aware of where the FBI has failed to stop someone who ultimately became a terrorist murderer.
Congressman King, you said after the bombings that, and this is your quote, "We are letting our guard down." Do you believe that this attack should have been prevented? And you have also said, I gather, that political correctness be damned, we have to do more effective surveillance inside the Muslim community.
Well, actually, as far as letting our guard down, I was being critical of those in Congress, some of my own party, who want to start cutting funding for Homeland Security because they think this war is over. It's not. As far as, what was the other part of your question, Chris?
The surveillance inside the Muslim community.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the threat is coming from within the Muslim community in these cases. In New York, that's why Commissioner Kelly has 1,000 police officers out in the community. Unfortunately, he gets smeared by the New York Times and the Associated Press. But the fact is, we've stopped 16 plots in New York because we know that al-Qaeda has shifted its tactics. It's not going to be attacking us from overseas. We've been able to prevent that. They are getting people in our country who are under the radar screen, who have clean records. We saw it with the Times Square bomber, the subway bomber in New York, and now we've seen it, it appears, in Massachusetts. And 99% of the Muslims are outstanding Americans. The fact is, that's where the threat is coming from. When the FBI was after the Westies, they went to the Irish community. When they were after the Mafia, they went to the Italian community. If you know what threat is coming from a certain community, that's where you have to look.
Let me bring in Senator Feinstein, your reaction to that.
Well, that's exactly where they will look. I mean, I don't think all of this is very helpful. I think the important thing is to get the facts, let the investigation proceed. The FBI has very good interrogators. They know what they are doing, and I believe that they will put a case together that'll be very strong. With respect to whether we are doing enough in the Muslim community, I think we should take a look at that. But I don't think we need to go and develop some real disdain and hatred on television about it.
I must say, I don't think that's what Congressman King was saying. He was saying that's where the threat's coming from. We have to address the threat.
Well, this came at this point from 2 individuals. That's what we really do know. We do not know what their connections are. So I think we ought to find out before we begin to charge them with all kinds of associations. We
have a couple of minutes left, and I want to ask you a question and Congressman King a question. Senator, reaction to the Boston bombings has spilled into other issues, including gun control. And there's some conservatives who say, well, that when 1 million people in Boston were forced to stay in their homes, that a lot of those people, particularly in Watertown, where they were going door to door, and there was a real concern that this fellow might be on the loose, might break into their house, might take hostages. Would people like to have had guns?
Oh, some may have, yes. But if where you're going is, do they need an assault weapon? I don't think so. As the vice president
shouldn't they have the right to decide whatever weapon they feel they need to protect themselves?
Well, how about a machine gun then? We did away with machine guns because of how they're used. I think we should do away with assault weapons because of how they're used.
Semi-automatics, that's the most popular rifle in America.
And you can use a 12-gauge shotgun and have a good defensive effect. And there's the element of surprise. Now you've got police all over the place in Watertown. So I don't really think that this is applicable. I think there are people that want to make this argument, but 12-gauge shotgun, there are many weapons, the 2,000 plus weapons that are available to people for choice without an assault weapon.
We're running out of time, so I'm not going to give you a chance to answer that question, Congressman King, but I'm going to give you a chance to answer the other question. This has also spilled into the debate over immigration reform. Some conservatives, like Charles Grassley, senator from Iowa, are saying, you know, before we reform the system, we ought to focus more on who we let into this country. Your response?
Well, first of all, I don't think it should have a severe impact on the immigration debate. I do think that we should focus on whether or not it should be refined, and that if people are coming from a country which has a terrorist background, if there's a strong terrorist element in that country, that there should be extra vetting for people from that country. But listen, I'm a grandson of immigrants, and while I have some concerns with the security aspects of immigration reform, I don't think we should use that as an excuse to stop the debate. But I do believe that, again, if someone's coming from a country which has a strong al-Qaeda or any other type of terrorist element in it, that we should not be afraid to ask the extra questions, do the extra research, do the extra vetting to make sure that people coming in here have no affiliation at all to those terrorist groups.
Senator Feinstein, Congressman King, we want to thank you both for a spirited discussion. Thank you for coming in today. We will stay on top of all these developments.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, sir.